Okay, so once again, good morning and welcome to the AFM revision session. As I told you, every paper of AFM, there are two topics which are always included. Which are these two topics? Investment appraisal and risk management. Now, I'm not saying that it will compulsorily be included in section A only or it will be included in section B only. That's not how the expectation is, but yes, it will be included somewhere. In some of the questions that we have seen, the entire section A question of 50 marks has come from risk management. There have been cases where it's been investment appraisal and risk management, or sometimes it's been pushed to section B also. So have that expectation very clear कि investment appraisal में से question paper में आएगा. Now, whenever you have a question on investment appraisal, there are some specific adjustments bolo ya jo bhi bolo that often form a part of your calculations. So, the techniques for investment appraisal, let's understand what those are. Now, while there are multiple techniques, the ones that are tested in your exam are NPV, because NPV calculation is therein, because that is what will involve longer calculations and that will test your abilities. So in this discussion there will be multiple methods like return on capital employed, payback period, discounted payback, NPV, IRR, MIRR, Macaulay's duration, modified duration. In your investment appraisal discussion you could have a question on international investment appraisal, then real options incorporation, APV, and ultimately risk in investment appraisal and capital rationing. The first technique, return on capital employed, is a simple formula which is PBIT, that is profit before interest and tax, upon capital employed into 100. This method is a profit based calculation, and the decision rule is if the ROCE is greater than the target return, then the project is accepted, otherwise, the project is rejected. You might even be asked to calculate the return on equity, which is profit after tax upon equity into 100. Again, it's a relative measure, not an absolute measure. And one of the biggest challenges with both these methods is that it uses profits and not cash flows. See, when you go for cash flows, that is a more tangible, a more real number, whereas a number like profit could be a heavily manipulated number, which is why slightly less reliable as compared to other methods. Thinking about the next one, which is the payback period method. Payback period method basically answers the question within how much time will you get back the money that has been invested in the business. In payback period also, every company has a target that the money invested should be recovered within this much period of time. If the payback period is less than the target, you accept the proposal, otherwise you end up rejecting the project. Like payback period, like the previous method, that is return on capital employed, even this method has one drawback, that it considers the cash flows, but it does not consider the time value of money. Also, it ignores the cash flows that happen after the payback. So just in case if it so happens that the cash flows after the payback period start declining, okay, if the cash flows after the payback period start declining, then in that case those cash flows are ignored and you might end up selecting a project that does not fit in with your overall plan, and it might end up becoming more of a loss making engine for you than generating profits. So one problem that we discussed, that this method does not incorporate the calculation for time value of money. That problem is solved with the discounted payback period method. What you do in this method is you have your cash flows given to you, you get an appropriate discounting factor, you calculate your discounted cash flows, you take the total of the discounted cash flows, cumulative cash flows, and then you calculate the payback. Okay, now again the decision rule remains the same. This method, while it does consider time value of money, it still does not take into account profitability of the project, and it does not consider cash flows that take place after the payback. So that is, a blind spot when it comes to decision making, and this method is not the most preferred method while deciding whether to invest in a particular project or not. How do you calculate the payback? If you have the same annual cash flows every year, then the formula is initial investment upon annual cash flows. When the cash flows are not the same each year, how do you go about it? You take the cumulative cash flows, identify the year which has the last cumulative negative cash flow and the year which has the first positive cumulative cash flow. Matlab, if you look at this, last cumulative negative cash flow is in year 3, next one is in year 4. ठीक है, identify that. And in the year before the payback, so how do you calculate the payback? The formula is year before the payback. What is year before the payback? Payback is happening in year 4, so the year before that is year 3 plus unrecovered amount upon cash flow in recovery year into 12. So this gives you your payback period. Now, the profit-based measures have a problem, which is that profit is a notional figure and it is the outcome of different accounting policies. Something, that is more suitable from a financial reporting perspective, but decision making, fortunately or unfortunately, relies more on certain tangible items like cash flows, and therefore these profit-based measures might not be so effective. Also, there is scope for a lot of creative accounting when it comes to uh, these profit based measures, because how easy certain manipulations in the financial statements are, how profits and expenses and equity and all these figures can be manipulated, which is why these methods are less reliable. When it comes to cash flow based measures, the net present value method takes the cake in these calculations. It is the single most important reliable method. The NPV method makes certain assumptions. What are those assumptions? It assumes that the cash flows will occur at the end of the year, when you know that in reality that is not going to be the case. The NPV method also makes assumptions with respect to certain growth parameters. For example, a question might contain the fact that every year sales grows by 10%. Now, that is an assumption, and the success of the NPV method depends upon how true the assumptions turn out towards the end. Now, if for some reason the growth that you have targeted does not come out to be true, or it fluctuates because your calculations or your estimations were incorrect, your NPV will not be the same that you had projected, and that might severely impact your decision making. A calculation of NPV is basically present value of inflow minus present value of outflow. Cash flow figures are given to you. You multiply that with an appropriate discounting factor. If the NPV is greater than zero, that means you have generated that much wealth for the business and you accept the proposal. If the NPV is less than zero, that means it has led to erosion of wealth and you reject the proposal. Now, the assumptions in the NPV model that we discussed, all cash flows occur at the end of the year. Initial investment occurs at T0. Other cash flows start 1 year after that. The good part about NPV is that it is a cash flow based approach. It considers time value of money. It considers cash flows for the entire life of the project. It should lead to maximization of share. And ultimately, the returns that you get are absolute returns. And this basically talks about how much wealth has been generated by the end of that particular period. It is difficult to explain certain calculations to managers because the concept of time value of money itself is something which is super difficult to explain. Then of course it requires knowledge of cost of capital, because the rate that you are going to use for discounting, that rate itself is a that rate is the cost of capital, and if you don't know how cost of capital is calculated, then naturally these calculations will become quite alien. A question that is very frequently tested in the paper, as in I have seen it come at least 4 to 5 times, 4 times, so pakka dekha hai, is what are the assumptions used in the NPV method, or what are the assumptions used in the APV method. Now, first of all, talk about these basic assumptions that initial investment happens at T0, further cash inflows start from T1, cash inflows only occur at the end of the year, so on and so forth. Then start questioning the validity of all the data points given in the question. They will mention that revenue has grown by this number and costs have inflated by this number and blah blah blah. Now, how do you question the assumption, or what do you talk about these? You have to mention that the acceptability of the project depends upon the correctness of the NPV estimates. Okay, the acceptability of the project depends upon the correctness of the NPV estimates. Now, sorry, the acceptability of the project depends upon the correctness of the sales and the cost and the fixed cost and all of these estimates. If and the question says that sales is growing by 10% and costs are growing by 12% at any of that point. So now you should say that the success or the NPV has been calculated as 25,000. Now the project is getting accepted because the NPV is positive. If these assumptions don't turn out to be true, the NPV might turn out to be negative, which could lead to changing the decision about acceptance of the project. So that is another point that you will mention with respect to assumptions. Then the question will contain tax rate, for example, as 20%. Then you should say that this is also an assumption that the tax rate is going to be 20% throughout the life of the project, which in reality might not be the case because the government can change the tax rate. Another major assumption is that we use the same rate for discounting. Now, if you have seen some of the questions that we did very, very recently, where the spot rate was changing year on year, which means it is quite possible that the actual rate of interest, that is the actual cost of capital, might also change year on year, but your evaluation has been done using an older cost of capital, so the correctness of the NPV value might be in question. Now, what they are doing when they are checking or when they are asking you here, tell us the assumptions, they are basically checking your skepticism skill. So whenever you are writing a theory response to what assumptions have been used, make sure that you talk about the assumption first, but then you keep on reiterating the fact that the correctness of this value and by implication the correctness of other things, acceptability of the decision will depend upon how correct the assumptions are. Okay, now throughout your investment appraisal calculations, you will be using something that is called a free cash flow. Now, free cash flows are revenue minus cost minus investments, and these are ultimately used for all your calculations. A question might have details on inflation, that cash flows are getting inflated by a particular rate. Make sure that all your calculations you use the nominal cash flows only. Don't use real cash flows unless explicitly stated. What are nominal cash flows? The actual amount that is hitting your bank account or the actual amount that is going out of your bank account. And whenever you are using the nominal cash flows, you should also make it a point to use the nominal rate. How do you calculate the nominal rate? 1 plus nominal rate is 1 plus real rate into 1 plus inflation. Okay. Now, 1 plus real rate will be given to you in the question and inflation rate will be given. Please remember that if there are multiple inflation rates given in the question, the general rate of inflation should be used for calculating this nominal rate. Otherwise, what you should do is, but if there are multiple rates given to you, तो revenue के लिए revenue का rate use करो, cost के लिए cost का rate use करो. General rate of inflation should be used for application of this formula. See, in the question, make sure that money cash flows are mapped with the money rate. Real cash flows wala question you will hardly ever get in the exam. These notes will be shared with you. So the ones who are not in my regular batch, these notes will be shared with you. In case you want, just let me know on WhatsApp and I'll help you with that. You will have an adjustment related to calculation, not just in investment appraisal, but in other topics also. The question will say taxes paid in arrears, which means it will, if income is earned in year one, taxes paid in year two. Income is earned in year two, taxes paid in year three. If this happens, then naturally the tax saving will also occur 1 year later. So scenario two would be that the question says tax is paid in the same year in which the income is earned. So year one में cash flow and tax payment also is in the same year. Now, any expense that you debit to P&L here will lead to tax saving. So if the salary expense increases, it leads to tax saving. If the depreciation increases, that also leads to tax saving. The difference is that when you include depreciation in the calculations, depreciation is a non-cash expense, whereas the tax saving that it leads is a cash tax saving that you get. And how do you calculate the tax saving on any item? That expense into the tax rate will give you the amount of tax saving in the question. Now, there are certain questions, where they will mention that XYZ expenditure is not allowed for tax purposes, which means although you will subtract that as a cash flow, you will not consider that for the tax saving calculation. ऐसा एक question ना we have done. Now, in case of depreciation, what you should do is they will give you the written down value percentage. So calculate depreciation year 1, 2, 3, 4. In the year of disposal, do one thing. Calculate the WDV at the start of the year of disposal. Compare that with the disposal proceeds. If WDV is greater than disposal proceeds, it creates a balancing allowance, which is like an expense. But if WDV is less than sale proceeds, WDV is 10,000, sale proceeds are 15,000. That situation, which is a profit on disposal, is called as a balancing charge. Treat that balancing charge like an income, and then you will, of course, have to pay tax on that. Now, if there is a working capital related adjustment in the question, please remember that working capital is always required at the start of the period. What does that mean? Say, for example, you are doing certain calculations and they say that the working capital requirement in year one is 5 lakhs. That means working capital is required at the start of year one, which is T0, which is then followed by T0, T1, T2, T3, T4. And in 99% of the questions, the investment in working capital will get released at the end of the project. Now, another adjustment that is mostly given in the question is that as the sale increases, the working capital requirement also increases. Say, for example, the sale in year 1 is 1 lakh and the sale in year 2 is 2 lakh. The question will contain an adjustment that additional working capital, which is basically 25% of the increase in sales, is required at the start of the year. Now, if that is the situation, then calculate the change in sale, multiply that by 25%. That is the additional cash outflow, which will have to be included in the calculation of NPV for working capital purposes. And ultimately, a working capital will get released at the end of the project life cycle. There are very few questions, by the way, एक या दो ही questions है at most, where they have specifically told you that working capital does not get released. Okay, now, something that you should know by now, but I'm again repeating that. Yes, Nashra.
Sir, if the question is silent regarding the release of working capital, so
It will get released. Unless explicitly said, you will always incorporate the release of working capital.
okay, sir, thank you.
Otherwise, the question has to tell you कि यार don't release the working capital. वो वैसा होगा तभी आप कर पाएंगे, अदरवाइज नो नीड टू डू दैट. सारे केसेस में रिलीज करवाना ही है आपको. Now, there are two approaches to NPV calculation. One is the cash flow based approach. The second one is the P&L based approach. I would advise you to go for the P&L based approach in all AFM questions. What is the P&L based approach? Take sales minus cost minus depreciation minus everything else, arrive at the amount of taxable profit. ठीक है, calculate tax on taxable profit, which is at the rate given to you. Now what you should do is you will get profit after tax. Profit before tax minus tax करेंगे तो आपको मिलेगा profit after tax. Cash flow figure कैसे मिलेगा? Cash flow figure is profit after tax plus depreciation amortization. ठीक है, बाकी कौन any other approach that we know, which is the cash flow based approach, is it wrong? No, it is not wrong. That will also give you the same answer. But if you are not good with numbers, which a lot of people are, that is the situation. Calculations में दिक्कत होता है, गड़बड़ होता है. Still at AFM level, if you have a confusion कि यार, how does the cash flow based approach map with the profit based approach? अभी वो टाइम नहीं है to understand कि यार why are the two approaches the same and why do they give the same value. आप शांति से profit based approach use करो in the exam. Sales minus expenses minus depreciation minus all costs. ठीक है, you will arrive at PBT. PBT में से tax हटाओ, you will arrive at PAT. In that PAT, you add the amount of all the depreciation amortization values, you will get the cash flow figure. Use that cash flow for all the calculations. If you are not good with basic idea of cash flows and this thing, approach use mat karna. Chupchap use the profit based approach and get the job done. 1 week before the exam is not the right time to dive into यार which approach works better for me. अभी उसका time unfortunately अपने पास नहीं है. And that should be the least of your concerns when you are attempting your AFM paper. अब जो अभी अच्छा, this is a word for everyone. If you haven't touched upon certain topics, for example, you haven't done too much of callers or you haven't done too much of something, अब टाइम नहीं है to start something new. Maybe maximum till Sunday you can touch upon some topic which you haven't covered. Sunday के बाद don't go and venture into something that you haven't done. अभी तक जो किया है उसी पे अभी फोकस रखो. Don't start something new right now. Also, don't go for new questions after Sunday. Only keep on revisiting the questions that you have done. Unnecessarily आपका confidence उसमें चला जाएगा, and that's not the ideal position to be in. Now, investment appraisal decisions at AFM level mostly involve either international NPV or APV or incorporation of real options in these calculations. So that is where our focus is going to be. Yes, tell me.
Hello, sir. I had just had a small doubt regarding investment appraisal.
Hmm.
In that, I often get confused with the balancing allowance and the balancing charge and residual value. So I think I've just learned it up, but I don't know the understanding behind it that the residual value will get taxed, sorry, discounted completely. And balancing allowance is also taxed. Is that correct, or is that something that you can explain and make it better for me logically?
Oh, okay. So there are certain questions which specifically mention that the tax will be levied on the residual value. So
Yeah,
in that case, when you are calculating the annual depreciation, what you should do is you should not subtract the residual value from the cost. So there your depreciation should be cost upon the useful life, and you will end up taxing the residual value proceeds at the end of the year. In certain questions, they do specifically mention that the tax has to be levied on balancing charge or balancing allowance, and then that
yeah,
calculation will be done accordingly. Now, unfortunately, right now we don't have enough time to get into the logic of this particular point.
yeah.
If I find the time, I will tell you, but that itself is like a 15-20 minute discussion. So right now, if you have learned something up, then I would advise
Okay.
you to stay with that.
Yeah, perfect, sir. Thank you.
Most welcome. Now, in a lot of questions, what you will have is you will have a situation where you have a project in another country, and then you are taking, so that project runs there, and whatever cash flows are earned in that country, those are then remitted back to the home country, also to the place where the head office is situated. And these international NPV situations will come up in the paper. So you will be given a foreign exchange quote. A foreign exchange quote here will be a very simple one. 1 euro equal to 100 rupees, $1 equal to 80 rupees, something like that. And this will be a spot rate will be given to you. That is the rate today will be given to you, and your cash flows will occur at the end of T1, T2, T3, T4. So how do you estimate the exchange rate at T1, T2, T3, T4? What you will have to do is you will have to use either the purchasing power parity theory or the interest rate parity theory. इंटरेस्ट रेट पैरिटी थियरी कम आता है, परचेसिंग पावर पैरिटी थियरी is tested more. So basically, what they will do in the question is they will give you the inflation rates year on year. So spot rate is $1 equal to 80 rupees, and then they give you inflation rate at end of T1, T2, T3, and चारों साल का inflation rate in the foreign country and in the home country will be given to you. What you are supposed to do is you are supposed to use this formula S1, that is spot rate in the future, is S0 into 1 plus inflation rate in counter currency upon 1 plus inflation rate in base currency. Now, what is counter currency and what is base currency? $1 equal to INR 85. If this is written, what is written with the one? That is my base currency. What is the other thing is your counter currency. Use this rate to estimate the exchange rates for the next 4 years. And when you are converting the cash flows at T1, T2, T3, T4, you can use that rate for the cash flow conversion. Also remember that cash flows occur at the end of the year, so you will need all the 4 years ka number. Okay, so the data will be given to you multiple years inflation. You just have to incorporate that. Now, like the purchasing power parity theory, where they give you inflation rates, they might give you interest rates in the two countries, and you might be asked to predict the interest rates for the future. So, you might be asked to predict the exchange rates for the future. So, what you will have to do is you will have to do F0, which is you'll have to use this formula. Future spot rate is S0 into 1 plus interest rate in counter currency upon 1 plus interest rate in base currency. If they ask you exchange rate after 6 months, then interest rates को आधा कर दो. But if they ask you exchange rate after 2 years, don't double the interest rate. Apply the formula twice. ठीक है. And as I told you, interest rate parity theory, less chance of being given to you in the calculations. What you will mostly be given is you will be given inflation rates in the two countries for the next 4 or 5 years, and you will have to use that for estimation of आपका फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रेट्स. ठीक है. नाउ इन मोस्ट ऑफ द क्वेश्चंस ऑफ इंटरनेशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट अप्रेजल you will have a situation where you are paying. So for example, I have set up operations in, I don't know, Thailand maybe, or Bangladesh, I don't know, one of these countries. So I earn 1 lakh rupees there. I pay tax on 1 lakh rupees at the rate of 20% in the other country, and then those profits are remitted to the head office in India. And on that profit, again, the Indian government says now we levy a tax of 30%. Now, this is a situation of double taxation. And in order to avoid a situation of double taxation, what you get is you get a double taxation relief. How do you calculate the double taxation relief? Basically, tax paid in the other country is allowed as a deduction from the total tax liability that you have to pay in your country. So on 1 lakh, that 1 lakh profit that you earned in the other country, you pay 20,000 tax there, and in your country they will be levying a tax of 30% on that. So 1 lakh into 30% is 30,000, but you have already paid 20,000 tax in the other country. So in India you have to pay 30 minus 20, that is 10,000 only. Now you could have different situations. Basically, the foreign tax rate is less than domestic tax rate, so pay tax at lower rate in the foreign country and pay tax at differential rate in the home country. So 20% is the tax rate there, 30% is the tax rate here, pay 20% there and 10% here. If the foreign tax rate is greater than the domestic tax rate, pay tax at higher rate in the foreign country, no tax in the home country. And if the foreign tax rate and the domestic tax rate are the same, then pay tax in the foreign country, no tax in the home country. Okay. In the end, the company will end up paying tax at the higher rate. Net impact will be tax paid at the higher rate. Now you will have, ये काफी केसेस में ये सिचुएशन आएगा. One significant adjustment that you often do in international NPV questions is the adjustment on royalties and all of these points. Now, what happens is the home country or the head office or the holding company, it gives a certain patent or a certain formula or a certain technical know-how to the subsidiary company. The subsidiary company manufactures products using that, and then what the holding company expects is that you manufactured the product using a technology that we gave. So on every unit that you sell, you have to give us 30 rupees for every unit that you sell. That is royalty. Now, the royalty that you earn so for example, the subsidiary company is supposed to pay you a royalty of 30 rupees per unit sold. Okay. So you will calculate the royalty in the foreign country, in the foreign currency. Then then that will be remitted by the foreign country to the head office. You will have to use the conversion rate that you have already calculated. Say for example, $1,000, $2,000 and $3,000. Usko convert karo using the exchange rates at T1, T2, T3. वो कन्वर्ट कर लिया. नाउ यू हैव द कैश फ्लो इन योर डोमेस्टिक करेंसी. ठीक है. एंड देन व्हेन इट कम्स टू टैक्सेशन ऑन दिस रॉयल्टी इनकम दैट यू हैव अर्न फ्रॉम द फॉरेन कंट्री, उस पे यू विल हैव टू कैलकुलेट फुल टैक्स. एंड on the profits that are remitted, on that amount you will have to calculate the differential rate of tax. Now, quite a few questions in your paper will contain an adjustment of carry forward of losses. What will that situation be? That situation will specifically say here, year one may you have incurred a loss and year two may you have incurred a loss. That loss will be carried forward. So what happens is, say I have incurred a loss of 100 in year one, and the question says that you carry forward the loss. Year 2 में my profit is 200. Now usually अगर 200 का profit होगा तो at the rate of 30% my tax is going to be 60. But because I carry forward the loss, year 1 का loss I take to year 2, I adjust it against the total profit of year 2. 200 versus 100, the profit after adjustment is 100. Then 100 into 30% gives me what? 100 into 30% gives me 30, which is a lower tax outflow that I am suffering at this point. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that if a loss is carried forward to the later year, then that leads to a reduction in the overall tax liability. The instruction to this effect will be given in the question, so you don't have to worry about it. And for the international NPV questions, this is one pro forma that we use. We first of all calculate the NPV, sorry, we first of all calculate the net cash flows in the foreign currency. Okay. Then we have the exchange rates that we have calculated. We convert that into home currency using these exchange rates. We add royalty or management fees. Then we have the domestic tax impact. This is a very important adjustment. On royalty or management fees, you have to pay tax at the full rate in home country. On the taxable cash flows from row G, on the taxable cash flows from ROGI, you will have to use the differential rate, calculate the total tax. That is always like a separate working note altogether. You will get net home currency cash flows. Usko discounting factor laga. The value that is left with you is the present value of cash flows. Take the total and you have your NPV. ठीक है. Now, in your exam questions, sometimes they might even ask you to calculate the internal rate of return or IRR. IRR का लॉजिक एंड कैलकुलेशन इज अ सेपरेट पॉइंट. आपको अगर IRR कैलकुलेट करना है इन द स्प्रेडशीट, इट्स वेरी सिंपल. राइट इक्वल टू IRR, प्रेस टैब, take all the cash flows and close the bracket and press enter. You will get the IRR ka value. And if this IRR is greater than the cost of capital, you accept the project. If this IRR is lower than the cost of capital, then you reject the proposal. Like IRR, you also have a modified internal rate of return. The reason why this method is better is that instead of assuming that the cash flows generated from the project are reinvested at the IRR, this method makes a slightly more reasonable assumption, and it says that the cash flows generated from the project are reinvested using the company's current cost of capital. So you get your MIRR value. How do you get that? MIRR is PVR upon PVI into, sorry, PVR upon PVI raised to 1 by n into 1 plus RE minus 1. What is PVR? This is present value of the return phase of the project. Return phase matlab T1 to T5 वाला जो cash flows है, we are talking about those. PVI is present value of the investment phase when the cash outflow is happening for capital assets at the time of starting of the project, initial capital investment. RE is the cost of capital and N is the uh, it's the tenure of the project or the period of the project. MIRR, if it is greater than the company's cost of capital, accept the proposal. MIRR, if it is lower, reject the proposal. Keep one thing in mind when it comes to MIRR, it might get tested for a 2 mark adjustment in the paper. Okay, like in a section A question, there could be a 2 mark calculation on MIRR और आपको पता होना चाहिए how is MIRR calculated. Now, talking about one more aspect when it comes to investment appraisal or decision making, that is the duration. Now, how is duration calculated? Is there a formula? Yes. This is the entire story behind it. Now is not the time to go into the story. Now is the time to remember the steps for Macaulay's duration. How is it calculated? Total of present value of time weighted cash flows divided by total of present value of cash flows. ठीक है. You have A, B, C, D, E. These are the 5 columns that you should make. You should write the time in column A. Time means year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Amount is the amount of cash flow. Discounting factor at the rate of 10%. Then DCF and time weighted cash flows. ठीक है. Step 1, calculate DCF by multiplying cash flows with the discounting rate. Calculate time weighted cash flows by multiplying column D, DCF with column A. ठीक है. Column A is basically your year number. So DCF of year 1 into 1, DCF of year 2 into 2, ऐसे करके you get the time weighted cash flows. ठीक है. Numerator is the total of column E and denominator is the total of column D. So total of present value of time weighted cash flows divided by total of present value of cash flows. इसका जो भी आंसर आपको मिलेगा, that is your Macaulay's duration. How is modified duration calculated? It is Macaulay's duration divided by 1 plus cost of capital. Macaulay's duration is the name given to time weighted cash flows until cash flows are received and is measured in years. Modified duration is the name given to price sensitivity and is the percentage change in price for a unit change in yield. You will not be asked to explain the meaning of duration. You might be in worst case scenario asked to calculate the duration, which by the way is not a very tough calculation. In case they ask you the meaning, these two lines are more than enough to do that. In certain questions, you might have a topic on capital rationing. That is, capital rationing refers to a situation where you have shortage of capital. If it is a single if it is a single period capital rationing, what you have to do is you have to calculate the profitability index. How is profitability index calculated? NPV upon initial investment. उसके हिसाब से you rank the proposals. The proposal which has the highest rank gets the capital allocation first. The least ranked project will get the capital allocation at the end. Now, there are certain situations where you have multi-period capital rationing. Most of the numericals in skill level were single period capital rationing. वैसे ही you could have a multi-period capital rationing also. A multi-period capital rationing situation can be solved using linear programming, but uska numerical calculation or graphical presentation is not there in your syllabus, and ACCA has explicitly mentioned that on the study hub. Now, the projects in front of you could be divisible, which means even a part of the project can be undertaken. No need to take up the full project. You could also have a situation where the projects are indivisible, which means either you take up the whole project or you don't do anything. Third situation could be projects are mutually exclusive. And if that is the case, it means if A and B are mutually exclusive, what it means is that either you can take up A and then you can't take up B, or if you take up B, you can't take up A. ठीक है. अब एक और commonly asked question within the investment appraisal this thing investment appraisal umbrella is the discussion on adjusted present value. Now, what is adjusted present value? The adjusted present value method, in this what you have to do is you have to first of all calculate the base case NPV. How is the base case NPV calculated? You take into consideration all the cash flows, but you discount these cash flows using the company's cost of equity. Base case NPV is that NPV which you calculate assuming that the project is all equity financed. तो पहले cost of equity लो from the question, calculate the base case NPV. Then to that you add the financing side effect. So basically in this situation, what we are trying to do is we are trying to first of all calculate that just on the basis of pure business cash flows, is the project generating positive or negative NPV. उसके बाद the impact of financing is added. So it separately tells you कि on the basis of capital structure of the company, on the basis of the overall funding structure, interest rate structures, and all of that, how much is the impact of that on your NPV calculation? So you do a separate base case NPV, which is a regular NPV calculation, and then you add the financing side effect. How exactly is APV calculated? APV is First of all, you will have to calculate in most questions, you will have to calculate the asset beta for the relevant business. Now the question will have equity beta for the business that is given to you. You will have to convert that equity beta to asset beta. What formula will you apply? You will apply asset beta is equity beta into E upon E plus D into 1 minus tax. Then that asset beta calculated in step 1, you will have to use that to go to the cost of equity using the CAPM. KE is RF plus beta asset beta into RM minus RF. Okay, this is step 2. Step 3, calculate depreciation and tax saving on depreciation if that data is given to you. Calculate issue cost of debt and tax saving on such issue cost. Calculate issue cost of equity. In all the questions that we have seen, you will notice that on the issue cost of debt there is tax saving, on the issue cost of equity there is no tax saving, but cash flow impact दोनों का आएगा. Then calculate tax saving on interest. Whatever interest payments you have made on the regular loan, on the subsidized loan, on anything, interest निकालो, उसका present value of interest payments calculate करो. Sorry, calculate interest, then calculate tax saving on interest और उसका present value निकालो. Then calculate the present value of cheap loan. How will you get APV? Base case NPV less cost of issue. This is an outflow. Add tax saving on interest, add tax saving on issue cost, add present value of cheap loan, you will get your APV. ठीक है. How is the present value of cheap loan calculated? A cheap loan would be a subsidized loan. Calculate interest at the market rate of borrowing. Regular loan पे जो interest rate है उसके हिसाब से calculate interest. Then calculate interest at the lower rate. Step 1 minus step 2 will give you saving of interest cost. ठीक है. इस स्टेप का प्रेजेंट वैल्यू निकालो, बिकॉज डिस्काउंटिंग फैक्टर, apply the discounting factor and calculate the present value of interest cost saving. Then one more calculation that you have to do is step 1 ka interest, that is interest using the market rate of borrowing into tax rate. Step 2 ka interest, that is cheap loan का interest into tax rate. ये करके आपको क्या मिलेगा? You will get tax saving, and again you tax saving had you borrowed using the original rate of interest. Tax saving that you are making because you have borrowed using the lower rate of interest, वो यहाँ पे calculate करो. Calculate the difference between step 5 and step 6, which is basically the tax saving lost. और जो tax saving कम हुआ उसका value निकालो. Calculate the present value of the tax saving lost. PV of cheap loan is step 4 minus step 8. ठीक है. Now, अभी probably, see, I will be sharing the sheet with you. If you want to get into the logic, the explanation is available. Otherwise, at this stage, learn the steps and go for the exam. In certain questions, you might have a situation where they say that the loan is repaid in equal annual installments. In that case, how will you calculate the equal annual installment? Amount borrowed divided by annuity factor for n years. That will give you the value. And baki ke calculations, so tax saving and all, you know how to do that. No rocket science involved. So whenever you are calculating the base case NPV, make sure that the discounting is done using the cost of equity only, not using the weighted average cost of capital. And then उसमें आपको financing side effect add करना पड़ेगा. There are some questions that have been asked in the past on APV. So if you were to compare, international NPV कम बार आया है, APV and real options थोड़ा ज्यादा occasions पे आया है. Now, the real option thing is probably one of the easiest things that you can expect in the paper if it does come. See, there what you have to do is for valuation of options, you will have to use the Black and Scholes option pricing model. Now, the best part about the ACCA exams is that nowhere are you don't have to perform detailed calculations at all. See, when you log into your exam platform, if the question incorporates options, तो क्या होगा? This option BSOP calculator will be given to you. All you have to do is you have to input the value of PA, PE, R, S, and T. R, S, and T will always be very clearly given. PE is the exercise price and PA is the cash flows. So that item which fluctuates in values is the cap is the PA, that item which is fixed, matlab additional investment that you have to make, or the amount that you get on exiting from an investment. All of that is basically that will give you your value for PE. So ये पांच values डालो. This value in front of C is your call option. Value in front of P is your put option. So if the question says that we'll have to abandon the project after 2 years, we'll have to sell off the project after 2 years. In that case, use the put option. If the option involves additional investment after a couple of years, then you will have to use the कॉल ऑप्शन इन दैट केस. ठीक है. सो बी केयरफुल कि यार कॉल ऑप्शन कहाँ पे यूज करना है और पुट ऑप्शन आपको कहाँ पे यूज करना है. ठीक है. बी केयरफुल अबाउट दैट. इस पे क्वेश्चन अगर आया तो दोज क्वेश्चंस आर यूजुअली स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड टाइप ऑफ क्वेश्चन ही होता है. इट्स नॉट एज इफ इट्स अ कुछ आपको ना कोई कॉम्प्लेक्स वैल्यू एस्टिमेट करना है ना आपको कुछ और करना है. ठीक है. बी जस्ट कीप दैट फैक्ट इन माइंड एंड डू योर कैलकुलेशंस. अब अनदर प्लीज स्टॉप द स्क्रीन शेयर. हाँ. Another type of question that might be asked in investment appraisal is the value at risk calculation. Okay, again, if the value at risk is given to you, what are the steps that you will follow in the AFM paper? Okay, the annual VAR is basically standard deviation into value of the confidence interval. When confidence is 90%, take the value of confidence interval as 1.282. If it is 95%, take 1.645. If it is 99%, take 2.33. So, Timid, should we learn the values? Yes. Just learn and go ki if the confidence interval is 90%, value of confidence interval is 1.282. When confidence interval is 95%, this is the value. Okay. Take the standard deviation which will be given to you in the question into value of confidence interval will give you annual value at risk. And what is value at risk? It is an indication of the potential monetary loss likely to occur at a given level of confidence. So value at risk basically tells me that even when the project is functioning, what if the calculations slip? What if the assumptions change? How much value is likely to be impacted because of these changes? That is basically my value at risk. If the project lasts for n years and they ask you what is VAR for the project that lasts for n years, your answer will be annual VAR calculated here into square root of n. आपके पास स्प्रेडशीट दिया हुआ है तो आपको ऐसे तो दिमाग नहीं लगाना है. Do square root का calculation, multiply that by the annual VAR, and you have the final value given to you. So investment appraisal वाला जो universe है उसमें these are the most commonly asked, these are the questions that are asked in your AFM paper when it comes to numericals. Now remember one thing, when you are preparing for AFM, the next 1 week should be devoted wholly and solely only to theory. मतलब बाकी के numericals करो, but spend at least 1.5 hours every day on theory topics. I am revisiting certain theory topics for you to keep in mind, and we have discussed all of these in class. What are the most commonly asked questions? See, you might be asked something like discuss the assumptions behind this calculation, or the question might involve one of these approaches. Basically, something like sensitivity analysis हो गया, stress testing हो गया, या post completion audits हो गया. इस पे आपको question आ सकता है, या फिर limitations, advantages, disadvantages, do that as well. Now, in the exam, somewhere I believe that in the kind of questions that we have observed, in a 50-mark investment appraisal question, you could have a 4 to 6 mark subpart that might come from international operations. Okay, so I think we have seen questions which speak about political risk. We have seen questions which discuss about centralized versus decentralized treasury function. Okay, then we have done a discussion on transfer pricing. So touch upon those topics. Excuse me. And when you are doing that, also go through topics like how, what do I call it? Like आपका WTA हो गया, आपका इंटरनेशनल मॉनेटरी फंड हो गया, या रोल ऑफ सेंट्रल बैंक्स हो गया, एक बार पढ़ लेना, बिकॉज उसमें से क्वेश्चन अगर आ गया तो दोज आर इजी, 4 to 6 मार्क्स, उससे ज्यादा नहीं आएगा. बट वी हैव सीन क्वेश्चंस इन द क्लास, वेयर द थियोरी पार्ट इज अबाउट WTO, और द थियोरी पार्ट इज अबाउट द political risk that a business entity might face. So अब लिस्ट ऑफ इम्पोर्टेंट टॉपिक्स, अब AFM का सिलेबस ना ऐसे ही बहुत कम है, तो अभी थियोरी में आप लोग और कट शॉट मत करो. प्लस मैंने वो 75 पेज का PDF भी दिया है ना आपको ऑन द ग्रुप. हैव यू गॉन थ्रू दैट? यस, सो दैट उससे और कम नहीं कर पाऊंगा मैं. दैट 75 पेजेस इज all the theory drilled into one place. I can't go shorter than that. If others want, message me. And if you were a part of my batches, it's all on the group. Every piece of information, at least for people who were with me, and most of the people sitting here were with me in the batch. Every single thing that is required for your AFM paper, आपके स्टडी हब का, कैप्लन स्टडी टेक्स्ट का, हर चीज का चप्पा चप्पा छान मार के मैंने आपको पूरा AFM पढ़ाया है. आई हैव डन मिनिमम 40 क्वेश्चंस विथ यू इन द क्लास. दीज आर पास्ट एग्जाम क्वेश्चंस, प्लस टॉपिक वाइज पता नहीं कितने क्वेश्चंस हो गए हैं. तो पीपल हु आर विथ मी इन द रेगुलर बैच, इन माय ओपिनियन, दे डोंट इवन नीड द रिविजन. आपका सब कुछ बहुत ज्यादा डिटेल में हो चुका है. सिर्फ शीट खोलने का एफर्ट डालो, दिमाग लगाने का एफर्ट भी मत डालो. सिर्फ शीट ओपन करो, रीड व्हाट आई हैव रिटन. एंड one thing, I was talking to a student who had a doubt last week. कुछ उन्हें क्वेश्चन था. सो एग्जाम प्रेशर में पता है कभी कभी क्या गड़बड़ हो जाता है, एंड दैट कैन बी वेरी वेरी damaging. Especially, it can hurt your confidence a lot. I'll tell you what the issue is. You remember we were doing this Buriex company question. अब ये बच्चे ने क्या किया, I'll show you. आप मतलब एग्जाम प्रेशर में ये भी गड़बड़ हो जाता है. ही वॉज सॉल्विंग अ क्वेश्चन लाइक दिस, और साइड में अपना कैलकुलेशन कर रहा था. ही लुक्ड एट द बुरीएक्स कंपनी क्वेश्चन, एंड देन ही सेड, सर मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, सर आपने कैसे किया, आपका कैलकुलेशन इनकम्प्लीट है. देन आई टोल्ड हिम, आप थोड़ा साइड में देखो ना, साइड में कैलकुलेशन करके रखा है मैंने. एवरीथिंग दैट यू नीड इज इन द शीट. ऐसा कोई भी डेटा पॉइंट नहीं है दैट इज नॉट देयर. सो पीपल हु आर विथ मी इन द रेगुलर बैच, अब मेरे एंड से आपको देने के लिए मुझे कुछ भी नहीं बचा है. ठीक है. In which case do we take investment amount plus working capital together and then gross up for issue cost? And in most questions, we take only investment amount. The question will mention that the amount of issue cost is paid out of company's reserves. If the issue cost is paid out of company reserves, then you don't gross up. Otherwise, you will have to gross up. Now, in APV, some of you might have a question, which rate should we use for discounting? You could use the risk-free rate for discounting APV values in the calculation, or you could use the rate of interest on the regular loan for discounting. दोनों चलता है, दोनों में कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. Then in these calculations, make sure that you just mention the rate at which the discounting is going to happen. ठीक है. You do that much calculation and you explain the basis of doing that calculation, and you should be pretty sorted on how the calculations are happening. So the examiner in your paper is not going to judge you for the rate of interest used, as long as you are mentioning the fact कि भाई मैंने यूज किया है मेरा रिस्क फ्री रेट, या मैंने यूज किया है मेरा XYZ rate. So as long as you are mentioning that, the assumption that you have used, फिर उसको कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. So in your questions on, guys, if you have a question ना, speak out उतना आप कर सकते हो. uh, so for what was I talking about? Yes, Vedant, बोलो.
सर एक डाउट था। एक क्वेश्चन है जिसमें हमें स्पॉट यील्ड कर्व के रेट्स दिए हुए हैं, हमें फॉरवर्ड रेट कैलकुलेट करना है उससे टू कंपेयर कि स्पॉट यील्ड कर्व रेट ज़्यादा है या फॉरवर्ड रेट ज़्यादा है। तो द फॉर्मूला दैट विल बी यूजिंग वुड बी 1 प्लस करंट रेट टू द पावर n upon 1 plus previous rate. Is this the formula to calculate the forward yield rate?
ये कौन सा क्वेश्चन है?
Palt company.
वॉल्ट कंपनी। मैंने आप लोगों को बोला था ना कि 2017-18 के पहले के क्वेश्चंस मत करो, क्यों कर रहे हो आप? ऐसे टाइप के क्वेश्चंस उन्होंने पूछना बंद कर दिया है। अ लॉट ऑफ दोस टॉपिक्स हैव बीन रिमूव्ड आल्सो फ्रॉम द सिलेबस। तो मत करो ना प्लीज, वो मत करो, डोंट डू दोस क्वेश्चंस।
So the other doubt was around if we are given the bid and ask rate together and we have to calculate a common rate, so we can we use the
Average.
average rate?
Yeah. You can use the average. No problem.
So there is one question where they have said the working capital needs to be calculated on the basis of increase and decrease in sales, and the sales value is coming, the difference is coming negative in the third year, and in the
तो
fourth
रिलीज
year.
हो जाएगा वर्किंग कैपिटल। सो उतना जो डिफरेंस है, यूजुअली दैट इज योर कैश आउटफ्लो। इन सच अ केस इट विल बी योर कैश इनफ्लो।
So in the fourth year, they have taken the value from 1 year to 3 year. They have added the value and calculated the release.
सो ईयर जो भी आपका डिफरेंशियल अमाउंट आएगा, इधर इट विल बी एन इन्वेस्टमेंट और इट विल बी अ रिलीज। सो ईयर 4 का दैट कैलकुलेशन इज राइट। आई नो विच क्वेश्चन यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट। ईयर 1 2 3 4 में, ईयर 0 1 2 में आपका कैश आउटफ्लो है। T3 में भी आपका थोड़ा सा रिलीज होगा एंड बचा हुआ अमाउंट T4 में रिलीज होगा एंड ऑफ द प्रोजेक्ट। ठीक है? यस। एनीवन एल्स, एनीथिंग इन इन्वेस्टमेंट अप्रेजल दैट यू वांट टू आस्क? Unmute and ask me right now. वर्किंग कैपिटल इज नेवर पेड आउट ऑफ रिजर्व, ऐसा आपने कहाँ पे देखा है? मैंने तो नहीं देखा। यस नेत्रा।
Sir, if like cross rates are given and we have to convert, we have to invest in some foreign currency, but cross rates are given and cross rates are given in bid and ask rate. Then how to choose between the rates? That is one question in one of the questions. It's
टेक
not exactly of
एवरेज,
investment appraisal.
टेक एवरेज, दैट इज वन ऑप्शन। या फिर थिंक अबाउट इट, यू हैव एन इन्वेस्टमेंट और यू हैव कैश फ्लोज दैट आर इन फॉरेन करेंसी। नाउ दोस कैश फ्लोज व्हेन दे, जब आपको फॉरेन करेंसी कैश फ्लो इंडिया में मिलेगा, यू गेट द डॉलर। what you will have to do is you will have to go and sell the dollar to the bank, right? If you are selling the dollar, that means bank is buying the dollar, so they will use the
Yes.
bid rate in that case.
No, sir. My question was like that base currency for both the cross rates are in euros given, but in one base rate they have taken bid rate, and for the other part they have taken the ask rate.
Which question is this?
It's not of investment appraisal, it's वाशी कंपनी। उसमें ना थोड़ा सा जो इन्वेस्टमेंट करना है हमें वो फॉरेन करेंसी में करना है, तो उसमें क्रॉस रेट्स दिए हैं।
So see, when you are making the investment, जब outflow is happening, at that point you are buying the dollar and that means bank is selling the dollar, right? तो उस टाइम पे ask rate use करना पड़ेगा। And when the money is, when the cash inflows are coming to you, at that time you will have to use the bid rate.
ओके।
है ना? Because that makes sense, right? If you are making the investment, then you need the dollar. That means you will have to buy the dollar from the bank, right?
यस।
सो व्हेन यू आर, मतलब देन फिर आपको उसके हिसाब से, यू आर बाइंग द डॉलर मींस बैंक इज सेलिंग द डॉलर एंड देन व्हेन द बैंक सेल्स यू हैव टू यूज द आस्क रेट इन दोस सिचुएशंस। ठीक है? एनीवन एल्स? नहीं? ओके, cool. So, investment appraisal, we have discussed all different possibilities, and naturally, it's not possible for me to, जो मुझे 20 घंटा लगा करने को, वो मैं अभी naturally, it's not possible to discuss every single question. So, if I were in your place, what I would do is, today, just for today, I would go through the Excel sheets of the regular class and I will see every single chota chota question that I have done, so that I know how to calculate I know how to calculate the foreign exchange rate. I know how to tackle depreciation. I know how to tackle balancing allowance, balancing charge. And I also know how to tackle a situation where tax is on the disposal proceeds, tax is on the this thing, आपका क्या बोलते हैं उसको, tax is on the बैलेंसिंग चार्ज, वो सारे सिचुएशंस में देख लूंगा. एंड आई विल पिक अप अ कपल ऑफ क्वेश्चंस फ्रॉम द एग्जाम किट, वन क्वेश्चन ऑफ ईच टाइप से. एक क्वेश्चन मैं उठाऊंगा ईपीवी का, आई विल पिक अप वन क्वेश्चन ऑन रियल ऑप्शंस, and maybe I will pick up one section A question that has been solved in the class, and I will see how the entire calculation has been done, what I have written where. If you want to improve your preparation better still, now don't go for questions from the exam kit which are, अब तो ना honestly exam kit का एक भी नया question मत उठाओ, unnecessarily आपका confidence कम होगा. जो questions मैंने कराए हैं क्लास में वो questions उठाओ, और उसका डिटेल में जो explanation लिखा है ना, just go through that explanation properly. ठीक है, go through that explanation properly. That will solve 99% of the doubts that you have in your NPV calculations. उसके ऊपर नया कुछ भी ट्राई मत करना एट दिस पॉइंट, बिकॉज फिर आपका अननेसेसरीली कॉन्फिडेंस जाएगा. तो फॉर टुमारो व्हाट टॉपिक हैव आई क्या डाला है मैंने फॉर टुमारो? आई मस्ट हैव सेंड समथिंग राइट. यस, टुमारो वील बी, I'll be doing forex risk and dividend, and any doubts that you have, I will take those up in forex risk, because everybody has some problem or the other. I will be doing two questions tomorrow from foreign exchange risk. One question that a lot of people asked me was that Frongok company, जिसका पूरा solution नहीं हुआ था, so I will do that Frongok company question. Apart from that, if there is a section B question that you want me to do, let me know. If there is a section A question that you want me to do, वो मुझे बता देना. I will pick up maybe two questions from section B apart from that Frongok company question, and one question from section A that we have not already covered in class. उसमें से कुछ मुझे बता देना, मैं कल तीन तीन क्वेश्चंस आपके करा दूंगा additionally from the exam kit. Let these be questions that we haven't done, because जो मैंने किया है वो ऑलरेडी आपके पास रिकॉर्डिंग में है. ठीक है, सो डू लेट मी नो. एंड टुमारोज टाइम आई हैव गिवन एज 1:15. मैं उसको 15 मिनट से आगे पीछे कर सकता हूँ डिपेंडिंग ऑन हाउ माई डे लुक्स टुमारो. सो यू विल गेट दैट अपडेट ऑन द व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप. ठीक है, कल तक इन्वेस्टमेंट अप्रेजल का जो मैंने आज आपको होमवर्क करने को बोला है, मेक श्योर दैट यू डू दैट होमवर्क एंड देन यू कम फॉर द सेशन टुमारो fully prepared with investment appraisal. फिर forex risk again I will go through steps of all the different instruments, futures, forwards, swaps, options, सारा कुछ करेंगे. And on the basis of that we'll be doing, as I told you, three questions. One I will do from section A, two I will do from section B. तो अगर वेदांत आपको वो पॉल्ट कंपनी का आंसर चाहिए, एंड आई थिंक वो हमने नहीं किया है बिकॉज इट वॉज एन ओल्ड क्वेश्चन, तो मैं करा दूंगा कल. ठीक है. यस.
श्योर सर.
सर मूनस्टार कंपनी.
मून स्टार ठीक है, फिर वो एक कर लेते हैं, बिकॉज एनी वे कल फॉरेक्स के तो सिर्फ स्टेप्स ही डिस्कस कर रहे हैं ना, अभी लॉजिक तो डिस्कस करने का टाइम है नहीं. तो मून स्टार इज ऑन द सिक्योरिटाइजेशन राइट.
यस सर.
ठीक है, मून स्टार कर लेते हैं. वील डू पॉल्ट कंपनी, वील डू मून स्टार, बट मून स्टार इज नॉट अ क्वेश्चन ऑन फॉरेक्स. हाँ, चलो मैं आपको क्वेश्चंस भी बता देता हूँ मैं कौन से लूंगा, सो दैट यू नो यू कैन कम, थोड़ा सा क्वेश्चन देख के आ जाना, सो दैट वो क्लास में क्वेश्चन देखने का टाइम आपका बच जाएगा. ठीक है, एक सेकंड. व्हाट ऑल हैव वी डन? अपना पॉल्ट, एवान, सीएमसी, डाइकॉन, ये चार ही बचे हैं ना, बाकी के सारे हो गए हैं राइट.
यस सर.
तो पॉल्ट कंपनी कर लेते हैं. आपका भी वो एक जो भी डाउट है, लास्ट डाउट मन में, वो निकल जाएगा. और मे बी वी कैन टेक डाइकॉन टुमारो, लेट मी सी. एंड सेक्शन ए में से इस बार बैच में लाइव हमने महोने कंपनी एंड नॉर्थनी कंपनी किया था राइट.
यस
सो इनमें से एक कर लेता हूँ, फॉन्डिर कंपनी कर लेता हूँ.
सर. फॉन्डेर और वाशिका आपने रिकॉर्डिंग
रिकॉर्डिंग,
ली.
तो ओकान कंपनी कर लेते हैं, नो प्रॉब्लम. तो एक ये हो जाएगा, और इसमें से ये दो कर लेंगे कल, पॉल्ट एंड डाइकॉन. एंड ये जो है एवान एंड सीएमसी, ये सैटरडे को उठा लेता हूँ, ताकि फिर रिस्क मैनेजमेंट पूरा ही हो जाएगा, फिर कुछ बचा ही नहीं उसमें. ठीक है, एंड अलॉन्ग विद दैट वो जो मून स्टार है दैट आई टेक अप। ठीक है, टोल तक का पूरा सोल्यूशन है ना आपके पास?
यस सर।
टोल तक है लेकिन मून स्टार का नहीं है। ठीक है, विल टेक अप मून स्टार देन।
सर एमएनडे में वो गैल अभी करना चाहिए कि एक बार देख लेना चाहिए कि इट्स
करा
ओके?
देता हूँ, करा देता हूँ। मतलब यार देखो, किसी के मन में ये कसर नहीं रहनी चाहिए कि ये चीज नहीं हुई। करा।
सर आप रिकॉर्डिंग दे दोगे या सॉल्यूशन दे दोगे तो देख लेंगे एक बार। वो
साथ
बहुत
में बैठ के कर लेते हैं।
ठीक है सर।
ठीक है, सैटरडे को कर लेंगे। एमएनए वैसे भी आई थिंक मैंने सैटरडे या संडे को ही प्लान किया है, तो उस टाइम पे कर लेंगे। ठीक है।
Yes,
एंड
sir.
फॉर पीपल हु वर नॉट अ पार्ट ऑफ माई रेगुलर बैच, आई विल सेंड यू 3 वीडियोस। 3 वीडियो सॉल्यूशंस दिए थे ना मैंने आपको ऑन यूट्यूब। I remember giving 3 solutions. So the people who were not in the regular batch, उनके लिए 3 investment appraisal section B questions have been solved on YouTube. I will send you that particular recording. Yes, Vedant.
तो एक छोटा सा वो डाउट था, अगर स्ट्रेट लाइन मेथड ऑफ डेप्रिसिएशन हम यूज कर रहे हैं टू कैलकुलेट टैक्स अलाउबल डेप्रिसिएशन, अगर हमें परसेंटेज गिवन है तो उन्होंने रेसिडुअल वैल्यू माइनस नहीं करी है, बट अगर हमें परसेंटेज गिवन नहीं है तो उन्होंने रेसिडुअल वैल्यू माइनस करी है टू कैलकुलेट टैट। तो ऐसा होता है कि अगर परसेंटेज गिवन है तो हम डायरेक्ट कैलकुलेट करते हैं और रेसिडुअल वैल्यू माइनस नहीं करते हैं?
देखो, इट्स नॉट अबाउट ऐसा सिचुएशन नहीं है, बट वन थिंग दैट आई कैन से फॉर दिस इज, जहां पे लिखा है ना कि रेसिड्यूअल वैल्यू टैक्स करना है, वहां पे आप डोंट सब्ट्रैक्ट द रेसिड्यूअल वैल्यू फ्रॉम द कॉस्ट वाइल कैलकुलेटिंग डेप्रीसिएशन। ठीक है, वो सब्ट्रैक्ट मत करो। बट अगर बैलेंसिंग चार्ज पे टैक्स लगने वाला है, सो इन दैट केस देन आप रेसिड्यूअल वैल्यू सब्ट्रैक्ट करो। आप ये जो क्वेश्चन बोल रहे हो, अगर आप मुझे उस क्वेश्चन का स्क्रीनशॉट भेजोगे तो मैं आपको देख के बताता हूँ कि क्या करना है वहां पे।
तो मैं एक बार आपको भेज दे।
एक बार मुझे भेज दो सो दैट आई कैन गो थ्रू इट। मुझे भी ऐसे हवा में आपको गलत आंसर नहीं देना है। ठीक है,
श्योर सर।
कूल देन। टुमारो कम प्रिपेयर्ड, दीज 3 questions एंड मूनस्टार कंपनी विल डू टुमारो। ठीक है।
So can you just repeat the question once
व्हाट क्वेश्चन?
uh, for tomorrow?
पॉल्ट कंपनी, देन,
आवन और डाइकन।
हाँ, ठीक है, चलो। थैंक यू सो मच गाइस, आई विल सी यू टुमारो। मैं टाइम थोड़ा 15 मिनट आगे पीछे करूंगा डिपेंडिंग ऑन हाउ माई डे लुक्स लाइक। ठीक है, चलो।
Okay.
थैंक यू।
Bye. Thank you,
बाय।
sir.
थैंक यू सर।
थैंक यू सर।
थैंक यू।